So now I am in Mudbox and I can import the OBJ I just exported from Mesh Mixer. You're most likely to get this warning that tells you that something's wrong with your mesh. Just keep this mesh essentially if you have any open edges, it will give you that warning. And here, because I don't have anything on the underside, it kind of gives me a warning all across the edge. It isn't really a problem unless I want to sculpt on that edge, so I will just turn it off here and display mesh errors. And as you can see, there's actually not too much, it's kind of hard to read this texture, so I can turn off flat lighting if it's on by default, and then I kind of get more of an actual reflection going, so it's easier to see the geometry on itself. I can rotate the object here in the Select Move tab, select the entire object, go into rotate mode, and then just rotate it 90 degrees. And to deselect it, I click on the face selection and just click somewhere into the interface. So in order to import a texture, it doesn't do it automatically. I have to be in the Paint tab and click this little arrow, say Import Layer, and I can choose the original texture that I exported from Reality Capture. So here, just hit Open, and it will create a diffuse layer, and diffuse means it's just color information, so it doesn't, the texture actually doesn't decide anything about its the opacity or the reflection of the material. So now I can go back, right click onto the screen and go back to flat lighting if I want to see just the texture information without any material properties. So now here I'm in the painting tab. I can add additional layers. Here another paint layer, again in this case a diffuse layer, if I want to add additional painting onto my existing sculpture. So here's the paint tools. I can use a paintbrush, and this already looks like a pretty good color, but I can use the eyedropper if I want a specific color from my original model. So here I can use my paintbrush or painting tool to kind of brighten up certain areas of the model. But you know, it's up to you and your creativity to use it in different ways, maybe to actually entirely rethink or paint on certain aspects of the object. And you have kind of very similar to Photoshop, you know, pencil tools, erase tools, blur tools, and so on. A really useful one is the clone tool. For that one, I go back to my original texture map, so I can turn this layer on and off now, so I can see, you know, the changes live of what I made. I can also just set transparency. But the stamp tool or the clone tool, if I want to go to my original texture, for example, get rid of that big shadow here, I can just kind of press Control. See, I pressed Alt automatically, but it actually is Control, so Mudbox gave me a little warning. So here with the Control tool, I can easily stamp the same texture to kind of create a consistent look, because color itself would maybe not look exactly the same, because it has sort of more of a rich texture here. So here I kind of just stamp that area because I want to add kind of an imprint onto the letter, and so the shadow is bothering me here. And here I go back onto my paint layer, turn it on, and I can sort of soften this area here, make it a little bit brighter. Maybe use a bigger brush again. You know, if you've used Photoshop or other drawing tools, this is actually very intuitive because it's essentially the same thing, just in sort of the third dimension. And now, if I want to export that layer, it's actually quite simple. So I can export them separately, or I can just take the entire diffuse layer here, right click and then say export channel merged, and that will automatically export both of these layers into a separate new channel that I can then export into Photoshop. So here I export this as bright texture, and that will give me a high resolution PNG that I can then import into Rhino in order to render it.